Hello and welcome back to the Sumner County Sports Show, brought to you by the Tennessee Highway Safety Office, where fans don't let fans drive drunk. My name is Blaine Kellar. I'm the sports editor of the Gallatin News, the Hendersonville Standard, and the Portland Sun. And spring is wrapped up. We have now hit the summer, I guess unofficially, but in regards to high school sports seasons, we have hit the end of the school year, end of the semester, to the much delight of every sports reporter, parent, coach, probably fan, and student athlete. Now that we've hit the end of the spring here, we want to give you a little bit of a wrap-up show talking about how every sport fared in Sumner County, how every team fared in Sumner County, starting with last week's Spring Fling in Murfreesboro. So we're going to jump right into it, start with what was probably the most successful of any in Murfreesboro in Spring Fling. Surprisingly, tennis. Merrill Hyde completed a state championship three-peat last week with a 4-1 win over Chattanooga School for the Arts and Sciences. It's their third straight team championship in Class A. A lot of great work done by the Hawks on the tennis side, by head coach Colton Jones and their number one starter in Tobias Mandeville, who won his second consecutive Class A singles championship last week as well. Kind of interesting to look at how those brackets played out. Mandeville did not drop a set throughout the entire tournament, whether looking at the team championships or the single championships. Last year's, and here's the interesting thing, last year's championship was Merrill Hyde versus CSAS. This year it was the same two teams that made the Class A championship, and then a similar final for the singles title as well, with Mandeville facing Chattanooga School for the Arts and Sciences, Ethan Porterfield. I saw those two match off in the team championship. A lot of fun matches there, but just a lot of dominance there from Merrill Hyde in the singles side and on the team side. There was still a lot of representation from Sumner County tennis too. Hendersonville's boys team fell in the state semifinals, one round short in the Class AA bracket of reaching the championship. Then you had two doubles pairings. White House's girls duo of Sophia Ramirez and Mackenzie Jenkins in Class A. They fell in the state quarters, as did Station Camp's boys duo of Weston Jones and Chase Etheridge. That was Class AA boys doubles. Like I said, tons of representation for Sumner County tennis. Lots of couple of titles there for the teams, and I'm sure that was exciting for everyone involved. It's a really cool venue out there in Middle Tennessee State in the Adams Tennis Complex. So just a fun week of tennis if you're into that. Now we'll talk about one of the other major sports in the spring. Soccer had two Sumner County representatives, as it has in years past. Merrill Hyde won its first game in the Class A state quarterfinals, beating Harpeth 1-0. Unfortunately, the Hawks could not get over that second round slump that they've been in the last 3 years. It's impressive in the first place when you can make three straight state semifinals, but this year they fell at the hands of Alcoa, final score of 3-0. That ended Daniel Brooks' career as Merrill Hyde head coach. Just an incredible run on his part. You got to give him a lot of credit. On the soccer side, he led Merrill Hyde past what was a former hurdle in the sectional round. He led them through that for three straight state tournament semifinal appearances. Lots of S's there, I guess. But just a fun run for him. I think he really enjoyed this spring, working through the challenges that this year's team faced, and producing a similar result as years past. Then, of course, there's Station Camp, the most successful team soccer-wise and major spring sports-wise for Sumner County. The Bison overcame a sluggish start, I guess you'd call it. I think that was the storyline of the year for the Bison, was that they struggled in the early part of the year, first 7 matches, and really rallied together with their deep senior class to make a dominant run to the state tournament. And then I think what some would describe as a Cinderella run to the state championship game. I'm not sure many people envision them beating Siegel, then Hardin Valley in the state semifinal to face off against unbeaten Brentwood. Of course, the final of that state championship game going to the Bruins with a final score of 3-0. Unbeaten season for Brentwood. You were going to run into a tough team no matter what. especially in that other semifinal with Brentwood playing against Bartlett. But just you tip your cap to Station Camp, to Jeremy Cook, to the Bison and their huge, I think, 14-man senior class for a really deep run in the state tournament, really deep run throughout the regular season. Just really found a way to return to that tournament after making it in a couple of years in a row and then delivering to make it to that state championship. Now we're going to go through a lot of track and field results. I think we had in total 44 individuals that were either part of relay teams or individual events from Sumner County that competed in this week's Spring Fling Championships, Class A, Class AA, Class AAA. And there were a lot of fun results out of that. Really just starting off with Merrill High Junior Parker Breitling and Portland's Will Hester, who in their respective events finished highest of any individual from Sumner County. Both of those had runner-up placings. They finished second. Breitling in the 800-meter run and Will Hester in the 300-meter hurdles. Lots of good things from Hester there. He placed in two events, qualified in both, in the 110-meter hurdles and the 300-meter hurdles, but was disqualified from that first event after running into a bit of trouble on I guess, the second or third hurdle. He struggled in the first couple, fell over, and then was disqualified. Talked with him afterwards. He was upset about that, but really didn't let it impact him for that other event, that second event, which was held later in the day on Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. And he really rebounded in a great way. I believe he had the lead for a majority of that 300-meter hurdle event, and then a runner from Elizabethton overtook him in the last moments to get that championship. But overall, for the Panthers, that was a really great showing by them. They had three different athletes qualify for the state meet and had a couple of place, including Hester. Seth Rippey placed 7th in the discus, and Benjamin Bradley actually tied two other placers in the high jump for first, but because of the tiebreaker, he ended up finishing third. It's a great showing for that school after not making the tournament in a couple of years. I know they snapped a state tournament drought or a state championship drought going into that meet, and then it hadn't been since Corey Brewer in 2000 that Portland had someone finish that high, third, second, or even first like Brewer did in the championship. So I thought it was kind of funny. I talked with Hester after that event and said, you have a connection with 13 or 14-year NBA veteran at this point. How exciting is that? But across the board, there was a lot of great stuff, not just with Portland. You had Class AA Liberty Creek sending four athletes to the championships in their first year of existence. Abby Cobb was the highest placer, third in the 1,600-meter run. And then Class AAA, while it was kind of an underwhelming performance whenever you look at the seedings and the placings of some of the other athletes going into the championships, you had a lot of players who had an opportunity to finish at least in the top three. The biggest story was Beach's 4x800 girls relay team. They finished 5th, but according to former Sumner County track and field coach Bob Fretch, that was a Sumner County record time, best ever done there. So you always want to see your best performance come at the end of the year. And not only was it the best for that club, but it was the best for any team in the Sumner County area. So like I said, a lot of interesting results there. I mean, you had a slew of schools. I think every school outside of Westmoreland qualified for the state meet this year. So banner year, I think, for Sumner County in track and field. And you hope they can build on that next year and try to get a couple more guys on the podium, I guess, in those third, second, or first slots. Now we're going to look at two sports that didn't have a team reach the tournament, kind of wrap up those two before we head to our first commercial break. First, looking at softball, extended an unfortunate streak here in Sumner County. No team reached the state tournament. Again, the last time a Sumner County team was in Murfreesboro for a state championship was 2016, and that was Pope Prep. So we've gone 7 years now in Sumner County without a team reaching that state tournament. Of course, a lot of teams typically reach that sectional round and then run into a buzzsaw or aren't able to capitalize on the advantages that they have there. The two teams that reached the sectional this year, Beach and Westmoreland, they both lost in their respective sectionals. Westmoreland lost 9-0, And Beach had a tough road to begin with. They beat Cookeville, kind of was a bit of a wild game, I believe, 9-8 or 8-7 in that region semifinal. But then in the region championship, the Buccaneers have to face off against Class AAA or Class 4A champion Green Hill before they obviously win the title, but run into a tough team there. So you end up losing to the team that wins it all. But in the sectional, you have to go travel and face the third place team from 4A in Nolensville and pitcher Rylan Smith, who's committed to Western Kentucky. So just a tough road for Beach. Of course, it was a tough one for Westmoreland too, as they were trying to snap a long stretch of not reaching Murfreesboro either. So, it was, I think, an overall successful season in Sumner County, though, for softball. You had a lot of players that ended up getting the opportunity to either play college ball or even Division I ball with two players in Hannah Gaines and Carly Ward. So it's a fun season. You hope that next year they can build upon it and maybe break through that glass ceiling and hit Murfreesboro. And lastly, we look at baseball, which, well, softball had two teams in the sectional. Baseball had none. No team reached the sectional round. The three teams that reached the region tournament in Portland, Station Camp, and Beach all fell in those rounds. Exciting seasons for them, and it was overall a really talented bunch in Sumner County. You had a lot of guys that were committed or signed somewhere, lots of great pitching. When you look at Hendersonville's like Morris, look at Station Camp's duo of Carter Casabella and Matthew Massey, or you look at Beach's 1-2 punch of Cooper Johnson and Jackson Fitzwilson. Those two guys are, being developed by what was a star pitcher in Coach Chris McWhirter, who spent a long time in the minor leagues and really started at Davidson Academy before that here in the Mid-State. So there were a lot of successful pitching. There was some good offenses here and there, and you really thought that somebody was going to continue the streak after Hendersonville made it last year, but no team even hits the sectional series with that format changing, which I thought was the craziest part, was that you had a lot of teams have success. A lot of teams reach, 3 teams reach the region tournament. Now with the new format, you could lose a game, still make the sectional, and even in the sectional, you could lose a game and still make the state tournament. But I guess in some areas there was a lot of success with the new format, in others, maybe not so much. So that's the wrap up of the 5 sports that we had kind of here in the spring and how they did in Sumner County, both in the regular season, the postseason, and in the state tournament. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about each school in Sumner County, how they did in the major sports around the area. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Tired of hanging lights every year? We get it. That's why Southern Nights is here to help. We install programmable lighting on your home or business so you can enjoy beautiful, customizable lighting all year round. No more ladders, tangled lights, or cold nights outside. We do the work, you do the celebrating. Call Southern Nights today and take the hassle out of holiday lighting forever. For a free quote, give us a call at 931-241-3074 or visit our Facebook page at Southern Nights.
Hockey in Music City just hits different. It's one big honky-tonk party. It's the sea of gold in the crowd, the goals, the saves, the celebrations. It's an experience like no other. Experience Predators hockey all season long. Visit NashvillePredators.com/season tickets and join the Loyal Legion today. That's NashvillePredators.com/tickets, and we'll see you at Bridgestone Arena.
Vroom, vroom. Time for the Rackley Roofing 200, and it is going to be June 23rd out at the Nashville Super Speedway. And we partnered up, all of us here at Main Street Media TV, and we have joined with Rackley Roofing to send you. Yep, what you got to do to win? All you got to do is go to your favorite Main Street Media website, look for the Enter to Win banner, click there, and you're in. Like Flynn. Isn't that cool? Main Street Media TV and Rackley Roofing sending you to the races.
You've been putting back a few, and a few becomes a few too many. For a moment, you think about calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. What's the worst that can happen? You get pulled over, your insurance goes up. You lose your license, you total your car, you kill someone.
There is nothing better than drinking an ice-cold beverage while taking in a Nashville Sounds baseball game. Hi, I'm Stephanie Miller with Mornings on Main Street. The Nashville Sounds and Main Street Media Television have teamed up to promote Sunday Family Fun Day here at First Horizon Park each Sunday home game. Just go to your favorite Main Street Media website and click on Sounds Main Street Media Day banner to register to win free tickets. And then we'll see you here at the ballpark.
The Sumner County Sports Show is brought to you by the Tennessee Highway Safety Office, where fans don't let fans drive drunk. Thank you for tuning in and watching us this week as we wrap up spring sports here in the county, get ready for the summer, and what that might look like. Stick around and we'll let you know. But as we continue our wrap-up show here for the spring, we're going to look at how each school in Sumner County fared, major sport by major sport, this spring. So, of course, we're going to look at softball, baseball, soccer, tennis, and track and field. We kind of just went through the track and field results. We'll touch on those a little bit more as we progress through the schools here. But tennis, those results are kind of hard to find, especially in the region or the teams that maybe didn't make it out of the district tournament. Of course, a great season for every team involved here in Sumner County. It looks like there's a great depth of tennis talent here. So really excited to see what they do in the future. Give a quick tip of the cap before we go school by school here. Starting off with Beach, we talked about the softball team a little bit. They dropped their first game in the district tournament in surprise fashion. This was a Buccaneers team that won 12 of their first 13 games, but then struggled through April and came into May, lost to number 4 seeded Hendersonville in the first round of the district tournament. So facing elimination already after being one of 3 teams to finish first in their district. But the Buccaneers rattled off 5 straight wins to win their first title since 2018. Like I said, they played a crazy one against Cookeville in the region semifinal and then dropped 2 to end Christy Utley's coaching career as Beach softball coach. A little bit more news on that coming in the next few days. Watch out for the Gallatin News and the Hendersonville Standard. There's a little bit of a teaser on that. But looking on the baseball side for Beach, I'd say that the Buccaneers were the best team baseball-wise in Sumner County this spring, judging by the fact that they made it the farthest. I think Portland might have tied them, but 3A versus 4A. Looking at the Buccaneers, though, like I mentioned, Cooper Johnson, Jackson Fitzwilson were a great 1-2 combo for this team on the mound. It was hard to score against them. For pretty much every district team this year, Johnson, I believe, was named the co-pitcher of the year again. He was a great asset for the team last year, great asset this year. They won 1 game in the region. They eliminated Station Camp, but then they were eliminated ensuingly by Green Hill. They lost to the Hawks in that first round game as well, so were unable to make that sectional series and see how they would maybe have done against Centennial, which also made the state tournament. Looking at soccer, this was a talented Beach team with a few college signees. Matthias Cobb had a great offensive season. He signed with Tennessee Wesleyan, and Takandwa Bondway signed with University of Alabama Huntsville. A couple of college-level players on this team, but unable to make it past that Hendersonville Station Camp hump. Those 2 teams kind of have ruled 10 AAA for the past few years, and thus was the case this year. Hendersonville beating Beach 3-2 in the district semis to eliminate the Buccaneers and move on from there. I will say this about Beach, probably one of the more unique soccer venues I've been to, not only for the fact that it's up on this kind of bigger hill and you get a lot of wind that way, and it's almost connected to their baseball outfield, so you got to go track down missed shots in I guess it's right center a little bit, but they have their own song. Go check out my Twitter at sports_BK. Scroll a couple of months back, and you'll see that Beach has a PA announcer who has a career in music. His name escapes me at this moment, but he took the time the last few years to create a song to play before and after games. So it's one of the more unique things I've ran into, but I'm getting sidetracked here. Let's move on to Gallatin. The softball team reached the district title game for the first time since 1987. As I mentioned, they were part of that Beach run that ended them as the runner-up. So Gallatin finished as runner-up. Beach was the champion. So longtime region tournament drought snapped for the Green Wave. They fell in that semifinal game to Green Hill, as I mentioned, the Class 4A state champions. So it's a tough region to run into, especially after playing some really close competition in 10-4A here in Sumner County. On the baseball side, Gallatin looked good to start the year. They won a couple of games, a couple of states over. Then they came back to Tennessee and struggled in district play and then in some non-district games. But they really pieced it together at the end of the year. They finished off McGavick in the play-in game. And then although they lost to Beach in that first round of the district, actually eliminated Hendersonville, the reigning region and district champion, in an elimination game. That was a 4-3 game. That was a really interesting one. And, they fell just short of that region tournament, snapping a drought of their own against Station Camp. But really, I think if you're Mark Wilson and the Green Wave faithful, you're excited for what this baseball team can maybe do next year with a couple of pieces coming back and a lot to show for in the last month of the season. Looking at the soccer side, Gallatin struggled to keep up with the likes of Beach, Hendersonville, and Station Camp. There was this upper echelon of Station Camp and Hendersonville, I'd say. Then, Beach was right there with them, and I think Gallatin was probably near the bottom end of that totem pole, if you will. They fell 4-0 in the district semifinal to Station Camp, and I would assume the Green Wave are glad the district is shaking up next year, where Station Camp is out of it. They're moving down to Class AA, and then in are Green Hill and Mount Juliet, who are probably closer to Gallatin's level of play. Again, that's the thing about it, is that this landscape in Sumner County is so rich in soccer talent that Gallatin is still a pretty good team. They picked up some pretty solid decisions this year, whether those are ties against really good teams or impressive wins against teams that are near their caliber. But it's just so hard to keep up, I think, with the premier programs that this county presents. Moving on to Hendersonville, softball-wise, Carly Ward and head coach Ashley Jones helped Hendersonville more than double their win total this year. They won 7 games last year, won 17 this year. As I mentioned, that huge win against Beach, I believe that was their first since 2016. So this Commandos team has a lot to ride on for next year. They really impressed. I think they were only shut out 2 or 3 times all season. A high-powered offense, and as they're pitching and their fielding gains more experience, this is a team that could very well vie for a district championship next year. As I mentioned with the baseball team, an early elimination stopped the Commandos from returning to the state tournament this year. First-year head coach Justin Martin helped Hendersonville stay in stride with Beach throughout the regular season, and they actually tied, I believe, for the top seed, or Beach was the 1 and Hendersonville was the 2. It came down to the last regular season game of their series to figure out who that top team was, and it ultimately ended up hurting Hendersonville, having to play Station Camp again, and then having an injury to Braylon Klein, their star shortstop, hurt them a little bit in that elimination game against Gallatin, if I'm not mistaken. But it was a 9-2 game against Station Camp and a 4-3 loss against Gallatin. That this team is going to be really hungry going into next year as well. Looking at Station Camp, the back-to-back 10-4A softball champions. For Station Camp, the Bison, they failed to reach the district championship, created a 3-way tie between them, Gallatin, and Beach to end the regular season. But again, it was a matchups game, kind of having to face off in that 2-3 game again. And then, having to face a tough Beach team, I believe, in the losers bracket, ended their season with a loss. And, you think that this team is probably going to come back hungry like Hendersonville after setting lofty goals in back-to-back seasons, and now falling short of them. I think that always motivates a team to do better going into that next year. Baseball, as I mentioned, Station Camp reached the region tournament for the first time, I believe, since 2019, 4 years. Yes, Carter Casabella, Matthew Massey, great pitchers, great offensive players for the Bison. They both had wonderful years last year and really followed it up with good years this year. But running into Mount Juliet and then having to face off against Beach in an elimination game hurt them in that region bracket, but you figure that Corey Hepburt's going to have his guys ready for next year. Then, of course, soccer, as I mentioned, a sluggish start to the year for the Bison. Soccer-wise, I think they had a losing record 6 or 7 games in, but then had a bit of a surprise run to that state championship. Coach Jeremy Cook told me after that semifinal win against Hardin Valley, he said, I did not expect this to happen. If you told me at the beginning of the year, I would not expect it. So just a great run for this club, a huge senior class, like I said, and they're going to go on to do great things, whether it's on the pitch or off. Give you a little bit of a rapid fire round here, looking at all the other teams. We talked about the 4 major ones here in Sumner County. Now we're going to look at everyone else. Pope Prep, baseball had a down year. They struggled despite having one of the Mid-State's best pitchers in Chet Lax. The softball team struggled in its first season under John Osborne. They won just 2 games. And Trevecca's signing Jose Angel impressed in his last season for Pope Prep, but the Knights just missed the cut to make that state first round for the tournament there. I think they finished 5th, and in D2A middle, the top 4 advanced. So they just missed the cut there to maybe make it past that point. The best spring sports program to come out of Liberty Creek this year was its track and field program, sending forward to the state tournament. As I mentioned, Abby Cobb, who had a great showing at the cross-country state championships, she really impressed on the other side of that as well. Merrill Hyde, as I mentioned, the Hawks said goodbye to Coach Daniel Brooks after another state semifinal appearance in soccer. Meanwhile, tennis continued to dominate for the Hawks. We'll see what they do next year in trying to maybe compete with some of the Mid-State's best tennis clubs. Portland, the Panthers baseball team, had a runner-up finish in the district tournament and a little bit of a run in the region under first-year head coach Seth Doxey. But outside of that, its soccer and softball programs really struggled again. Single-digit wins, I believe, for the softball team. They'll have some work to do going into next year. Here's a little bit more on Westmoreland. Its softball team came this close to snapping a 38-year state tournament drought. But as I mentioned, the Eagles fell 9-0 to Community in a late sectional game. It was played on Monday night with the tournament starting Tuesday. Just a lot of fight from them, but that was probably their most successful club this year when you balance it with maybe tennis and then soccer and baseball and track and field on top of that. Lastly, we're looking at White House. The Blue Devils soccer team was probably the best in Sumner County through the first half of the season. They beat Hendersonville, Station Camp, and Beach in 3 consecutive games, all before the calendar turned over to April. So a really successful run by them under Coach Mark Lamberth, who collected the program's 500th win throughout this season. So a lot of success for that team. And whenever you look as the season went on, they tied with Gallatin, they shut out Merrill Hyde, they shut out Portland, and they shut out Liberty Creek. So overall, against Sumner County foes, White House finished 6-0-1. So I think Coach John Ferguson at Beach joked after a game against Hendersonville early in the season, if White House was in our district at that point, they would have been number 1. So kind of funny to see a Class AA team do something like that this year. You really tip your cap to them and to all the teams in Sumner County that competed so well this year. That's going to wrap us up here on the Sumner County Sports Show, which is brought to you by the Tennessee Highway Safety Office, where fans don't let fans drive drunk. Thank you for sticking around through 30 minutes and through this spring. Next week, we'll look a little bit more at some summer stuff. Stay tuned.